nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Quorum call.
Madam Speaker. I got him.
Has everyone recorded their presence? So the clerk will take the call. There being 115 members present, the House is now in session. Clerk will read the journal from the previous day.
Annapolis, Maryland, February the 26th, 2021.
Recognizing the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much to consider the reading of the journal from the previous day.
So order petitions, memorials, and other papers. Message from the Senate, number 9, consent calendar of Senate bills introduced in the House. The clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 2, Senator McCray, Appropriations and Environment and Transportation.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the reading of Senate Bill 2 be considered the reading for all the bills on the calendar.
Hearing no objections, the bills are read the first time and referred to the appropriate committee. Report of the Committee on Ways and Means, report number 12. The clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 113, Board of Revenue Estimates and Bureau of Revenue Estimates, Organization and Operations. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much to be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 includes the Revenue Monitoring Committee among the entities to review and evaluate a list of candidates for the position of Chief of the Bureau of Revenue Estimates, strikes provisions of the bill requiring the Chief and Deputy Chief of the BRE to be members of the Executive Pay Plan and specifying the salaries for those positions, and requires certain reports of estimated state revenue submitted by the BRE to the Board of Revenue Estimates to be first reviewed and approved by the Revenue Monitoring Committee before the estimates may be formally adopted. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 421, Income Tax Distribution, Tax Clinics for Low-Income Marylanders. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much to be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 transfers oversight of the grant programs for tax clinics from the Maryland Higher Education Commission to the Comptroller, limits the transfer of income tax revenues for the program to $100,000 in fiscal 22, and requires the governor to include funding for the grant program in the annual budget for future fiscal years. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 711, Income Tax Subtraction Modification, Donations to Diaper Banks and Other Charitable Entities. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much to be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 transfers administration of the subtraction from the Department of Human Services to the Comptroller, requires the Comptroller to submit a report to the General Assembly on whether there has been an increase in donations after the enactment of the subtraction, and if so, whether the subtraction modification contributed to that increase, and sunsets the subtraction modification after 3 years. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 712, Bureau of Revenue Estimates, Tax Incidence Study, Scope. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much to be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 requires governmental units involved in the implementation or administration of taxes and charges evaluated under the tax incidence study conducted under the bill to promptly provide any information that the Bureau of Revenue Estimates requests and otherwise cooperate with the BRE. Move the amendment.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 853, Small Minority and Women-Owned Businesses Account Alterations. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much to be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 makes the bill an emergency measure. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Judiciary, report number 7. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 271, Public Safety Law Enforcement Diversion Programs. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the committee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be the reading of the amendments. Move
So
much.
ordered.
Thank you. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 just makes stylistic changes and strikes the new language relating to funding. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 366, District Court Commissioners Arrest Warrants, Recall, and Issuance of a Summons. Favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 425, Criminal Law, Crimes Involving Computers. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the committee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
The committee's amendment reduces the maximum penalty from 3 years to 2. Move the amendment.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 445, Criminal Procedure, Charging Procedures, Citations. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the committee chair.
Move so much be the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 makes conforming changes relating to an application to the governor for extradition of a person charged with a crime by citation in the state. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Recognizing Minority Whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would you mind if we special ordered this to take a look at some amendments
To the next session.
to the next session?
Next session's fine.
Thank you.
Question for the House is to special order House Bill 445 until the next session. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill has been special ordered. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 742, compensation to individual erroneously convicted, sentenced, and confined, the Walter Lomax Act. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the committee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 alters the purpose paragraph. Amendments number 2 and 3 are clarifying. Amendment number 4 adds requirements for filing an order of eligibility. Amendment number 5 alters who may file an order in eligibility and adds a restriction for when an individual may file an order for supplemental compensation. Amendment number 6 authorizes an administrative law judge to recommend an expedited payment schedule under certain circumstances and makes a conforming change. Amendment number 7 alters the dates in the retroactive special section for when an individual can apply for a modification of a compensation award. Move the amendments.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 744, courts, counsel appearance fees, domestic violence. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the committee chair.
Move so much be the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Amendments expand the application of the bill to appearance fees for respondents' counsel, not just petitioners' counsel. Move the amendments.
Question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Special order calendar number 32. The clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 756, Office of Legislative Audits, acceptance and investigation of allegations of fraud, waste, and abuse. Favorable report is amended and adopted.
The gentleman from Calvert, the maker of their motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The floor leader and the sponsor of the bill was very gracious. All of my questions have been answered. Thank you.
Okay. House Bill 756 is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk. Special order calendar number 29. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 3, Correctional Services, Parole, Life Imprisonment. Favorable.
Okay. Okay. What? Okay. The question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. The gentleman from Anne Arundel in the annex.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Will the floor leader please rise for some questions and a possible amendment?
Good morning.
Good morning. I apologize, I don't see you. From over here in the 21st century phone booth, we don't always see you guys, lottery winners in the live well. But anyhow, and I did find it ironic yesterday. You guys have phones, and yet I have no phones in here. We've obviously taken on quite a few bills recently, but when I saw this bill, the subject matter is obviously very, very heavy, and something that I wanted to fully understand. And full disclosure, I heard your voice. I don't see you, but I know it's you, Mr. Chairman. So full disclosure, your legal background and knowledge, it is far greater than could ever imagine. So I I do have a couple, just very basic questions, so if you could be patient with me. Can you explain to me, this bill seems to address life sentence with parole in just that category, correct?
Correct. This only addresses life with the possibility of parole.
There you are, you look great.
You're doing great. You want to go to law school? You're in good shape.
No, sir. So how does the parole process work currently?
So what would happen in a case like this is you would have the person who's being held would meet with two parole commissioners who are appointed by the governor. They're appointed by the governor, I believe, to a 6-year term. They would have considered the victim impact statement beforehand. If the defendant didn't express remorse, or in this case, if the person who's incarcerated didn't express remorse or had difficulty conforming to confinement, the parole commissioners could say, no, we're not going to consider you for parole. If they have any other reason that they think that the defendant is not amenable to parole, they could say, no, you can come back and request parole another time. If they sign off, then the defendant gets a psychological risk assessment. And right now, the wait time for that is about 12 to 24 months. There's, from my understanding, there's only one person hired to do that. The report then is sent back to those two parole commissioners who make another decision as to whether to go forward or not. And then there's an en banc, the whole commission gets to decide whether or not the parole would be offered, and that gets done by majority vote. Then, on top of that, at the moment, the governor then, the decision is in cases where somebody has been sentenced to life with the possibility of parole, then it gets to sit on the governor's desk, and what has happened a great deal since the mid-90s is that hasn't gone anywhere. There are examples where that has been different in this administration, and I'll say that is entirely the case. But having said that, we're one of 3 states now across the country who has that additional stop in the process.
Okay, thank you. So there's 10 commissioners, and if they make a favorable recommendation, then it goes over to the governor. And the commissioners, they're appointed. They're not elected. They're not really accountable to the public, other than the governor making that appointment. And they're 4 to 6 years. Is that correct?
They're appointed by the governor.
They're appointed by the governor. That's correct. And you did mention the record recently, because I did look it up, and I saw we're taking this from 15 to 20 years, and with diminution credits, it can be reduced. But the governor, the current governor, of his recommendations, he's actually, and there's 3 ways that I understand. You can grant the parole, you can deny it. There's also what's called a medical parole, and then there's the sentence can be commuted. And Governor Hogan has actually paroled 29 people. He has medically paroled 9, and he's commuted 24 sentences for a total of 62. And I think the previous administration of Governor O'Malley had not paroled any of the recommendations, had paroled 2 medically and 3 commuted 3 sentences, which was 62 to 5. So I understand some governors have obviously taken a different approach. So, and you're moving this from 15 to 20, and from 5 to, or just taking it away from the governor. So is the intent of the bill to be tougher on crime, or is it just to remove the governor? Because I'm looking at the formula we use right now, and to me, it's just, let's just take the governor out of this plan altogether. And right now we have a 2-step, or if you will, a 3-step process, because obviously we all believe in second chances, but some of these people should not be back out in society, and we need to be sure of that, because I think we would both agree the most paramount responsibility we have as legislators is the security of the people that we serve. And I know that we would all want to make sure that we're doing that correctly. So is the intent of the bill just to be tougher on crime, or tougher on parole recommendations, and less people out on parole? Because this bill now is just basically, in my opinion, feels like the current governor's just not, he's just too soft on crime, I guess.
The goal of this legislation is to address an issue that this legislature has dealt with in different forms for years and years and years. And other members of the legislature, including the delegate from Montgomery County, delegates from Prince George's County, have put forward bills in the past that have raised this issue. It's an issue that fundamentally goes to an issue of the defendant was sentenced. They were sentenced to life with the possibility of parole. To effectively put a political stop at the end of that when the sentence that they received is life with the possibility of parole isn't right and isn't what we should be doing. And I know that in part because now there are 47 other states who have basically removed the governor from the process. And I know on top of that, we would be joining such liberal bastions as Oklahoma in doing this. So we're at a point, I think, where we have set up a process through the Parole Commission. We've set up a very clear process through the Parole Commission, where they have two commissioners who go out, who interview, who decide whether the person should go forward to a psychological assessment, which takes 2 years to do, can take as long as 2 years to do, to evaluate the defendant. Then they decide whether to go forward. Then they decide whether to take it to an en banc review of the entire Parole Commission. Then they have to make a majority vote. So it is not this isn't a casual thing that's happening here. They have to go through a lot of different steps in the process, and they have to go through that steps to ensure the public safety of the people of the state of Maryland.
And I fully appreciate that, but I'm sure none of us could probably name one of the commission members. To me, the governor's really the only one in the whole equation that's accountable to the public, but we'll leave that for now. And I do appreciate it, I really do. And I was looking at some of the recommendations the commission has made that the governor actually stopped, and I think it's important to point out. I just pulled a couple of recent. There was a recommendation from the commission that was sent to the governor that he denied, and it was from Baltimore City. It was a boyfriend who broke up with his girlfriend. They got in a big fight. He left. He came back the next night. They started another fight. He stabbed her with a screwdriver. He gagged her with a rag. He took a car engine belt and strangled her.
Does the gentleman have an amendment?
And threw her in the vacant house next door. Yes, Madam Speaker.
Please offer the amendment.
My point is, move so much for the reading of be considered the reading of the amendment.
We need the number.
Amendment number 563 322 1.
Amendment number 1.
What this amendment seeks to do is, if we're going to take these decisions that obviously have some pretty dire consequences out of the hands of the only accountable one in the equation, let's make sure that we feel good about the commission's recommendation. All of us here, when we go on a computer, we go through a 2-step process. You got to put a special code in just to add that extra layer of security. And that's all I'm trying to do here. I know I'm going to show my age, but one of my favorite boxers growing up was Sugar Ray. And Sugar Ray would typically go all 15 rounds. And if he got a unanimous decision, there was no doubt. He won. If there was ever a split decision, people always doubted they had to fight again. But Sugar Ray rarely did that. He was just that smooth. And then Mike Tyson came along, and there was no more decisions because he was just knocking people out in the first round until Buster Douglas came out and beat him. But it speaks to the unanimous decision, and we do that in here. How many of us puff our chest out when the chairman says, how was it voted on in committee? And we all say unanimous. You know why? Because we know then. We know that it's a solid bill, and a good decision has been made. And that's all I'm asking for in this amendment is, if we are going to take on this heavy subject matter, and I appreciate the chairman's explanation, and I understand, but I really do think our most paramount responsibility as legislators to make sure we get this right and secure the safety of our citizens. So let's make sure the recommendations, I did look it up, a little over 50%, I think there was a little over 200 recommendations made since 2015, a little over 102 of them, or I think it was 102, were unanimous. So 50%. I believe in second chances, I do, but I want to make sure that we're not releasing somebody out into the public that could endanger somebody. So all I'm asking for is simple. I would like to have the decision coming out of the commission to be unanimous so that we all know, without a doubt, this person deserves a second chance without endangering our citizens. With that, I ask that we push the amendment.
Committee Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd ask the body to resist the amendment. The existing parole process, as I've laid out, I don't mean to belabor the point, but the process that takes place for people who are going to be released from parole is significant. It's significant. It includes a psychological risk assessment. It includes an extensive process already that I don't think we need to add on to. And so for those reasons, I seek the House to resist the amendment.
If I may, Madam Speaker.
The maker of the amendment.
With all due respect to the good chairman, if it's not unanimous, that means that somebody in that commission, who I'm sure takes their job extremely serious, has some doubt about releasing somebody back into the public that could endanger them. And once again, I just think with a unanimous decision, we erase that doubt. I push the amendment.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Oppose?
Roll call, Madam Speaker.
Roll call.
Madam Speaker.
Clerk will take the call. The amendment fails.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the minority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have an amendment at the desk. It's Amendment 893926/1.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
What this amendment does is it phases out the governor's parole authority depending on the amount of time that the individual has served. So remember, these are folks that are serving time under the guise that they're serving life in prison. Under the amendment, if you have served 15 years or less, the governor must approve the parole. After 25 years, no credits, the governor must act. The governor must act. The governor can't just ignore it on a request for parole forwarded by the Parole Commission within 180 days, or parole is granted. And lastly, after 35 years, no credits, approval from the governor is not required. The Parole Commission will have the sole authority to grant parole. I offer this amendment because the governor takes the parole responsibilities very seriously. The potential rate of recidivism generally decreases as an individual ages, and removing the governor's parole authority should take place incrementally, in my opinion. The governor should have a say in the parole decision if someone coming up on parole for their first parole hearing, which could take place as early as 11 years into the sentence of life when considering diminution credits. For those reasons, I move the amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Committee Chair.
I'd ask the body to resist the amendment. The legislation increases the length of time that a person has to serve before they can seek parole from 15 to 20 years. They still, just as other people who are in the system, get the opportunity to get diminution credits, as the gentleman from Anne Arundel County mentions, but they are, under this legislation, which was a compromise piece of legislation, they do spend more time under this legislation than they were before. Again, I think that there is a significant process. It is a process that works. It's a process that is established, And it truly identifies those people who are amenable to parole and who are not. And so for those reasons, I'd ask the body to resist the amendment.
Any other debate? The question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Oppose?
Roll call, Madam Speaker.
Roll call.
Madam Speaker?
Clerk will take the call. The amendment fails. Gentleman from Western Maryland in the annex.
Good morning, Madam Speaker and body. I have an amendment at the desk. It's amendment number 423127/1.
Amendment number 1.
So much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Thank you. I guess I have a couple of questions for the floor leader first. Right now, as the bill currently stands, with diminution and confinement credits, this kind of piggybacks off the last question. How soon could someone be eligible for parole in the current bill?
Committee Chair.
Under the current law or under the bill?
Under the bill, thank you.
Under the bill, it's the general structure stays the same with the exception of the length of time that somebody has to serve before they can request this. The length of time goes from 15 to 20 years, but it does allow for the calculation of diminution credits. So you can receive diminution credits for effectively for being on good behavior inside, and it's worth mentioning that you not only get the credit. One of the things that the Parole Commission looks at when you are seeking parole in the first place is whether you picked up, whether you were found guilty of anything, of any rule violations inside the Department of Corrections. So they can get good time for being on their best behavior, and they can get good time for work. They can also get good time if they complete a degree.
So if they do all three of those, what would be the minimum time that they could apply to go for parole? Is that about 15 years?
It would depend. It depends on how much one moment, please, and I'll get my cheat sheet.
Thank you.
Thing about being chair of judiciary is you have a lot of paper. All right, so it depends. But for violent offenders, they get 5 days a month for a good conduct credit. So if they're not violating any rules and inside, they can get 5 days a month. If they do satisfactory progress at their work, they could get 5 days a month on top of that. There's a limit on the number of days that somebody who is a violent offender can get on the inside for diminution credits, and it totals about 20 days a month.
So it's safe to assume they could probably get out at about 15 years then, based on all those credits.
If they did everything right, yes.
Okay, great, thank you. And you brought up Oklahoma earlier as a conservative state, and I just had a curiosity. What's the highest penalty for someone who murders, let's say, multiple people in Oklahoma?
I believe that Oklahoma still has the death penalty.
Yes, it does. And in Maryland, do we have the death penalty?
We do not.
So what's the highest penalty in Maryland that someone can get if they, kill 30 people?
Life without the possibility of parole.
And then what's the next level?
Life with the possibility of parole.
Okay, and that's what we're talking about today.
Although some have argued that another possibility, to go with your example, if it's somebody who has killed multiple people, if they were charged with multiple and convicted of multiple counts of second-degree murder, the maximum penalty for that is 40 years. It's possible that if they killed multiple people, not to be garish and gory in the middle of the debate, but in any case, if they had killed multiple people, those could be consecutive sentences, and that could potentially be a sentence longer than that which would be given for a life sentence. So you could have 4 40-year penalties that stack.
Got it.
Or 3 or 2.
Thank you. So in Oklahoma, if someone was to plead down, they wanted to settle, they didn't want to go through the courts, they could plead from the death penalty to life without the possibility of parole. Is that correct?
They could plead to life with the possibility of parole. Yes, they could plead to something lesser.
Right. And in Maryland, if someone's going to plead down, the only thing they can plead to is life without the possibility of parole or life with the possibility of parole.
Because we have eliminated the death penalty, yes.
Okay. So what we have are some of the worst cases in the state of Maryland will be plea bargains down to life with the possibility of parole. And what we've heard today is that with diminution credits, that those folks who've created heinous crimes could get out with this bill in 15 years, as long as they act rightly while they're serving their sentence.
I'm sorry. Go ahead if you want to finish your question.
Go ahead. That's fine.
Under the current law, they would get out in even less time.
Well, they get out in less time if the Parole Commission recommended that they get out and with the safeguard of the governor saying he's reviewed it and will release them. Is that correct?
And he would be one of the only governors in the country that does that. And that's what we're trying to change. Do you have an amendment?
Well,
you have this
perhaps he is, but other states do have the death penalty. Other states, when you plead down, can plead to life without the possibility of parole. And when we're pleading down to life with the possibility of parole. And the only stopgap measure to prevent someone who's committed heinous crimes from getting out of the street right now is the governor. And the governor of Maryland has released several people who have been recommended to be released by parole officers. So, to the amendment, one of my first bills that I did as a Maryland state delegate was to increase the penalty for someone who intentionally killed a baby. You know, and I've talked to many people as a delegate who have been victims of serious crimes. And those victims have to live with the loss of their loved one for the rest of their life. And yet the perpetrator of the crime underneath this bill will get out in about 15 years. And with this bill, there will be no stopgap measure. There will be no governor to say, whoa, that crime was especially heinous. Yes, they plea bargained out, but it was especially heinous. There's no stop. They'll be out in 15 years. Now, there is the Parole Commission, but we don't have someone who's elected, someone who can look at this and takes the consequences if something goes wrong. This amendment, I think it's an important amendment because it'll say, instead of 20 years, that the person needs to serve at least 25, which we know with diminution credits would mean about 20. So with this bill, at least, we could guarantee that a murderer would at least serve 20 years in prison. I think it's very reasonable, and I move the amendment.
Committee Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd ask the body to resist the amendment. There are a few things that I'll mention here. First, again, the victim and the victim's family in these cases usually get to participate in the parole process. They get to engage in the parole process. So this is something where they are engaged in this process as well, and they are heard by the Parole Commission. I think the thing that I was getting at before as I was going through the dim credits is they have to do everything right. They have to do everything right at the Department of Corrections to get out in the length of time that the delegate from Allegheny County is referring to. And that is profoundly challenging. That is not easy to do at the Department of Corrections. They have to do everything right, but as they're doing everything right, They have to go through the process of getting the work training that they need, getting some skills at the Department of Corrections, and finding a way forward to effectively to seek and get that rehabilitation. That's what the parole process seeks to encourage. That's what the dim credit process seeks to encourage. And for all of those reasons, I don't believe that this amendment is necessary, and I would ask the body to resist it.
Madam Speaker.
Maker of the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I like to imagine, maybe their best friend, maybe a family member, that is a victim of a murder. The floor leader said that family member or that friend gets to testify in front of the parole hearings. Gets to. You know, if that were my family member, I wouldn't think that's an opportunity to get to speak to anyone when justice is not being fully executed. And to get to someone to be able to testify after 15 years, it just seems shameful. After just 15 years, you'd be hauled in and saying, well, let's rehash this murder that happened 15 years ago. You know, I think at least 20 years needs to go by before the family gets to appear before the parole board. I move this amendment.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
Roll call, Madam Speaker.
Noes have it. Roll call.
Madam Speaker.
Clerk will take the call. The amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Special order calendar number 33. The clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 784, residential construction electric vehicle charging. Favor report is amended, adopted.
Recognizing the committee chair who made the motion to special order this bill.
Well, naturally, my questions have been answered.
Gentleman from Frederick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to thank the committee chair for the opportunity to review the bill, and all my questions have been answered. Thank you.
Okay. Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Ways and Means, report number 13. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 656, election law, early voting centers, accessibility by public transportation. Favor of amendments. Amendment number 1.
Madam Speaker.
Floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
The amendments strike the bill as written and require a local bus operating on a fixed route within 1/2 mile of an early voting center to stop at the early voting center during the times the center is open. Move the amendment.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. The question now is the adoption of the Fable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Fable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1048, election law, permanent absentee ballot list. Favor of amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing subcommittee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
The amendments allow a voter to request a permanent absentee ballot status on the absentee ballot application and makes technical changes. I move the committee amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment has
Madam
been
Speaker.
adopted.
Madam Speaker.
Question now is the adoption. I see you. Question now is the adoption of favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. The gentlelady from Carroll.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just have a couple questions for the floor leader.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. Can you just tell me what the bill does?
Sure. The bill allows a voter to apply to be or request to be on a permanent absentee list so that they don't have to constantly reapply to get their absentee ballot status. It would be automatically mailed to them.
And you just, two things. You just said the word apply, and the word apply is scratched from the bill. It's request. What is the difference in apply and switching it to request?
Because apply kind of infers that the Board of Elections gets to decide if they get it or not. It's a request. They get to request it, and they will be on the list if they request it.
In writing this request?
It's the same way that one would apply for an absentee ballot now. So they can do that online. They can do that with the paper application. So it's the same methods.
So once they request it, they get a permanent status every election. And this is through mail, and I believe I read email as well. Is that accurate?
The same ways that they can get their ballot now via mail-in or absentee. So yes, it would be by mail, it would be by internet, and there's also an option for fax.
So they could request for eternity to get their permanent ballot through an email, and even if they relocated out of state, they could continue to get an email, and we wouldn't really know where the email's going.
No, that's not correct. Thank you for the question and opportunity to clarify. So as you know, the state is constantly cleaning up the voter registration list, and this list would be no different. So when someone moves out of state, Maryland is actually part of a program with other states where the local boards and the state board get notification on that movement, and that person would be removed from this list and the voter registration list. This absentee ballot request list as well, I keep saying request, but I mean the ballot list, as we clarified, it is cleaned up constantly. So when a voter moves, if the voter dies, they're removed from this list. So the bill includes very specifics when it comes to cleaning up this list as well.
And thank you for that. And I've questioned that cleanup of the list, and I just want to tell you a quick story, if you'll indulge me for a second. My daughter has not lived in the state of Maryland for 16 years. She still receives stuff from the election board every single election, even with her mother on the ballot. She hasn't voted in Maryland or lived in the state of Maryland for 16 years. She's lived in multiple other states. And I just wanted to see how long it went, because last year we got a ballot in the mail for her, like we always get all the communications from the Board of Elections. We got a ballot last spring. And I finally asked somebody, why is she still on this, 16 years later, hasn't lived in the state? And they said, oh, it's your responsibility to contact the Board of Elections when you move. Now, I don't know how many of you have moved out of state before, but how many of you think, oh, I got to call my Board of Elections to get myself off the list? So I think this cleanup process that people think is in place is not as in place as well as we think, and that's a concern of mine, especially when it's through email now that you can send these ballots not just to a physical location. But I just wanted to tell that quick story. I just want to see how long it went that she stayed on the rolls. But I'd like the special order to have for a purpose of amendment tomorrow.
Sure. How about we do next session?
We can do that if we get out of here soon, so I can get the amendment drawn up. But is the next session?
Next session.
Question for the House is to
Thank you, Madam
Special
Speaker.
Order House Bill 1048 to the next session. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill has been special ordered. Quorum call.
Madam Speaker.
Clerk will take the call. There are 133 members present. The House is still in session. Calendar third reading, House Bills number 22. Clerk, read the first bill.
House Bill 48, Criminal Procedure, Registered Sex Offenders, Entry onto School Property.
is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? The gentleman from, I see you.
Thank you, Madam
Gentleman
Speaker.
from-
I just
the
wanted to take
gentleman from Baltimore County.
Sorry about that. I just want to take a second to speak in support of this bill. This bill is a direct result of something that happened at Parkville High School about a year or two ago, and it's been kind of in limbo over the last year, but great to see it here. I grew up in Parkville, right down the street from where the high school is. I'm very familiar with the area. I played sports on the fields there, and I had a lot of friends, and some, guys, girls, both going to the school. So let me just, for those who are not familiar with why this bill is being presented today, in 2017, an individual was arrested with second-degree rape and charged with assault as well on a girl that was 13 years old. He pled guilty to second-degree assault and a fourth-degree sex offense. But by the fall of 2018, this individual was a registered sex offender, yet was still allowed to attend Parkville High School. So despite his past as a sexual predator, he was literally allowed to walk the halls with girls as young as about 14 years old. He was given permission to be a student by the principal at the school. Our laws at the time allowed it. He also happened to be 21 years old, which is an important side note. But to me, this was such an irresponsible decision. That's not where the tragedy ends. He was again charged with sexually assaulting an underage girl, this time while he was a student at Parkville High School. Police, they were given a copy of the principal's letter that granted him permission to attend Parkville, and according to that police report, that letter had expired in May of 2019, which was 7 months before he was arrested a second time. He was still going to school at Parkville. There's no excuse for this injustice, and I have to say I personally met with a number of delegates, I won't use their name, but they know who they are, with the victims. It was an emotional day listening to their story at a town hall that a local news organization held, and we heard the story firsthand. We all looked at each other, bipartisan, and realized that not only did we have the power to do something, but something had to be done, and that's why we're here today. And I just wanted to add that what happened at Parkville High School, it was a tragedy. Parents, their confidence in our institutions were pretty much destroyed. The young students, their confidence that we were going to protect them, that was failed, or we failed in that. It was all exposed. And although we cannot undo the horrors here, we can protect and prevent such a measure, or such a tragedy, I should say, ever happening again in the future. And we prevent that by enacting this legislation, and I support it, and I appreciate the bill's sponsors and you allowing me to talk from this. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Is there any further debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Clerk will take the call. There being 133 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 48, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 125, Public Institutions of Higher Education, Student Athletes, Jordan McNair Safe and Fair Play Act.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 123 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 125, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 277, Criminal Law, First Degree Child Abuse, Continuing Course of Conduct.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 135 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 277, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 411, criminal law enforcement officers, prohibition on sexual activity.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 97 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 411, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 477, court order to use a cell site simulator or obtain location information from an electronic device. Procedures.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 133 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 477, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 489, courts wiretapping, misconduct in office.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 135 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 489, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Calendar of third reading House Bills number 23. Clerk will read first bill.
House Bill 655, local elections, county commissioner and county boards of education, district voting.
Is on third reading and final passage. Recognizing the gentleman from St. Mary's.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Looked around the room before I stood up, wanted to make sure nobody else wanted to talk on this first. So I'm trying to think of what to say that I haven't already said on this bill. I'm a little disappointed when this bill first came to the floor. I just amazed at the audacity of it, that the chamber is willing to push through single-member districts in a chamber that doesn't adhere to single-member districts themselves. No less than 4 times on this House floor last week that I heard the term, one man, one vote. The funny thing is, those terms always came by people that are in multi-member districts. That seems contradictory to what the bill does for county commissioners. See, we have this little town in St. Mary's called Charlotte Hall. And Charlotte Hall is right on the county line. So if you're on the right side of the county line, the St. Mary's side, the good news is your property taxes are a whole lot cheaper. But the bad news is you get one vote for a delegate. If you have a constituent issue, you get one phone call. This guy here. If you're on the other side of the county line, the Charles County side, you get 3 votes. If you have a constituent problem, you get 3 phone calls to 3 different delegates serving on 3 different committees. So I'm trying to figure out how is one fair and the other isn't. It seems like we would fix the problems in our own house before we force it onto others and other bodies of government. Seems hypocritical to me. Like I've said before, I'm just shocked at how this bill, we could have had a great conversation about this. And, there's a lot of things the minority party agrees with in this bill. But again, it was how it was presented. Right from the jump street, the bill sponsor played the race card on this bill. I didn't think that was right. We tried to confront that right when the bill came to the chamber, which generated a bunch of tweets. Let me read you a couple. The Jim Crow era racial discrimination laws designed to regulate black Americans to second-class citizens in the area of life last 100 years. Disturbingly, we have folks making public policies that apparently don't understand the basic timeline. I mean, that rhetoric's not very helpful. I don't think it's true. We have another tweet from a prominent member after that debate. Mentions the floor leader defending voting rights and advocating to eliminate Jim Crow laws where the entire counties vote for in-district representation. So we show up on Thursday, and I lead with the First Amendment here offered, pointing out how hypocritical this was. Because we have counties like in Charles County that have the exact same process, that have a majority-minority Board of County Commissioners. Point out that in deep blue Montgomery County, they do the exact same thing, the same process with their school board. Offer that amendment up. Now, I didn't force that amendment to a vote. I'm thankful the committee took a look at it, and of course they had to adopt it at that point, else it would have just been extremely hypocritical. But, we didn't force that to a vote because that was the right thing to do. We're hoping to work out something with the bill sponsor. I called the bill sponsor last Thursday night and pitched the idea of a voter referendum and said, hey, let's let the voters decide. He shot that down. Next day, Friday, we pitched an amendment on the floor, voter referendum. Let the people decide. And was told in the rebuttal that we can't trust the people to make the right decisions. The people might make the wrong decisions. I think that's ludicrous. When do we become smarter than the people that pay our salaries? We're not. That's not democracy. Government is supposed to be for the people, by the people, of the people. Not for the majority party, by the majority party, of the majority party. That's not right. And let me I'm hoping this bill doesn't have to come back over here. Because this is like the last time I'll really want to speak on this thing. But let me take the opportunity to address two talking points that I see getting pushed from the other side. First is this whole thing where the current system dilutes votes. Yeah, that might work out for the one person running in this district that you're trying to single out, but the dilution of votes, currently the cumulative effect on my county is every citizen has 5 votes. This takes you to 2. When I was my first election, our Board of County Commissioners, the race between a Democrat and a Republican was decided by 24 votes. Don't tell me votes don't matter. They do. This other talking point that I hear is, it normally starts in some faraway place, like, I don't know, Garrett County. So you don't want people from Garrett County weighing in on your delegate race. Why don't we have single-member districts? And that's true. I don't want people from Garrett County weighing in my delegate race. The same reason why I don't want delegates from Lexington Park turning in legislation that affects Garrett County. Look, a delegate race is a local position. You're selecting your local representative for your state government. So, of course, only locals should be voting in that. That's exactly what we're talking about on this bill. It's a county commissioner race. So if you're a county commissioner representing Mechanicsville, if you're a county commissioner representing Leonardtown, there's a good chance that you know a lot about Lexington Park. It's only a few miles away. You go there probably weekly, if not daily, like a lot of the citizens. If you're a citizen in Lexington Park, you travel to Mechanicsville or Leonardtown almost daily. That's one of the geographical challenges we have when we're running, when you live on a peninsula. This bill should have been about local courtesy. On the commissioner races, ensuring people that have an opportunity to vote. You're going to talk about fairness and traveling from district to district. One of the main reasons one of the best ways to accomplish that is assuring that all people have the ability to have a say in who represent them, and this bill takes that away from them. You know, my Board of County Commissioners didn't ask for this. The House delegation didn't want it. The state senator doesn't want it. The other 5 counties that are affected, at least 4 of them don't want it, or at least are willing to say it publicly. This bill is divisive. It's been harmful. It's bad public policy, and I hope it fails in the Senate. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The gentleman from St. Mary's in the annex and the sponsor of the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'd like to thank all my colleagues for the spirited debate. I certainly didn't think this bill was going to get that much attention when I originally put it in. If it's worth any consolation to the opponents of my bill, even the Speaker yelled at me for how long this thing is taking. John Lewis once said, if you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, you have a moral obligation to do something about it. In the Army, they used to give us our officers a ton of grief because when we come around, we would ensure there was a standard being upheld and everybody was doing the morally right thing. Today, I feel like I'm back in the Army because I'm asking all of us to ensure we do the right thing here in Maryland. This bill is about democracy, plain and simple. People should have the ability to choose their representative. This system used in certain counties is undemocratic, and in Maryland, we should not allow it to continue to operate. This method once did, now does, and could potentially in the future dilute votes or disenfranchise certain voters from certain communities. Somebody not in my district shouldn't pick who represents me. Think about it like this. The people in Pennsylvania don't get to pick who our senators are in Washington. The people of Virginia, they don't get to pick who our governor is. And frankly, the people of Montgomery County shouldn't get to pick who represents Calvert County or Howard County or any other county in Maryland. Imagine if I proposed a bill that changed the form of state representation to the way it operates now. So all you would have to do is live in a certain district and then we are voted on statewide. I highly doubt the opponents of this bill would support that. That bill would benefit me and I wouldn't support that because that's not fair. American democracy is about having fair representation. Today in Maryland, something is not right, it's not fair, and it's not just, and we have a duty to act. This policy does not guarantee any one political party or minority or any other person gets elected. It simply gives a district the ability to elect who represents them. And that's the heart of the American democracy. I urge my colleagues for a green vote. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Western Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think a lot of what we've heard on this bill, has already been said, and I'll try not to reiterate it, but I can't share the passion that my 2 friends from St. Mary's County have shared in the debate today because this bill doesn't affect my county. You know why? Because my county, which is just as deserving of democracy as everybody else's county in this state, we elect our county commissioners completely at large. So does Washington County. So do other counties in the state. We don't have districts. We elect people to represent the entire county. That's legal. That's lawful. And the chair of our committee, who has my utmost respect, as well she knows, said very clearly during the bill hearing and the debate and the voting on this bill that nothing in this bill prohibits counties from choosing to elect their county commissioners on a purely at-large basis. And these counties can now go back and, in fact, decide to change their system of voting to eliminate districts and go to a purely at-large basis. They have the ability to do that. So, I don't think this bill really accomplishes a lot other than this. it's been, as my friend from St. Mary's County said, it's been divisive. It hasn't been divisive because we're having a good faith debate about principle and policy. Those things usually don't really upset people. You know, we have differences of opinion between the parties and between wings of the parties and factions of the parties, and we conduct those debates in good faith and we move on. But this has been divisive really for two reasons. Number one, I was taught, my grandfather told me sometimes that just because you can do a thing doesn't mean that you should. We all know who the majority party of the state of Maryland is and who holds 99 votes in the House of Delegates, and quite frankly, the majority party here could pass any bill they want doing anything to anyone, subject only to the courts, to the legal review of the federal courts and the Maryland Courts of Appeal. That's it. That is the only barrier that prevents you from doing whatever you want to our counties and to the minority party in this state. That's the way it is. That's a fact. But simply because you can do that doesn't mean that you should take these counties, Calvert, Garrett, Queen Anne's, St. Mary's, Charles. You should take these counties who don't want this and have valid reasons. They all told you they're valid reasons they came in here. These people are our friends. If you don't know them very well, get to know them. Get to know the delegate from Garrett County. Get to know the delegates from Calvert County and Queen Anne's County. They're not racists. They're not attempting to perpetuate a system of racial discrimination. They are not against you. They are not here making things up in their bill arguments. They are here telling you that the people of their counties, for very valid, rational reasons, want these systems of voting in place. And they have the right to do that. They have the right to do that. We cannot continue to allow ourselves to take every opportunity where we could have unity and instead divide ourselves. This bill has taken up far too much time. It has taken up far too much passion. It has inflamed passions of people because of the false narratives. I sat through the committee hearing. I heard the word Jim Crow thrown around quite a bit. We sat through the amendments the other day and we heard about how this would somehow create a racially discriminatory system. But then I read the remarks of the president, I believe, the president of the County Commissioners of Charles County, who used to head the NAACP in Charles County, who said that in his county, that this bill would actually potentially have the effect of reducing the participation and the political success of communities of color in his county. How can a bill and a system be racially discriminatory to communities of color if that's true? I hope that the body, as we proceed through the rest of this session and the future, takes these things into consideration. I hope that they realize that what we want is a good faith, honest debate. We don't want these types of accusations. We don't want these types of division to perpetuate any longer. Madam Speaker, I'll vote against the bill, and I hope that the bill will not become law because it is simply unfair, and it is the product of a flawed reasoning and a flawed process that we can come here and do this to these counties against their will. Thank you.
Gentleman from Charles.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, this was one of those bills, as I said, on the amendments that was very difficult. And I heard the good delegates' arguments, and we've tried everything we could to talk about this, work it through. Pretty much to no avail. And the one thing I'd noticed, there was this confusion about, are we not trusting people? And it's not really about trusting the people, it's about giving up power. And if you read my county commissioner president's statement in the paper, he was saying the same thing. Well, black people have power in Charles County, so representation doesn't really matter as much. But that's just as false as saying that we don't have any power and representation shouldn't matter. Because it's supposed to be about the people. It's not supposed to be about power. It's not supposed to be about race. It's about giving the people a voice. Because I was frustrated because we had begged for months, weeks, hey, Charles County, give us something. Let us know what you say. Nothing. Till, of course, after we took the vote. But it's about people. And I said it the other day, and I'll say it again. Just because my demographics change, it doesn't mean that my values do. And I stand up and losing the same thing that some of these individuals in Southern Maryland's other counties might lose. Yes, we could lose a seat to a white Republican. We have control as African Americans, thanks to Waldorf and Prince George's County sending me a lot of people. We have the power to control the entire county. And we should be willing to give that up for fairness, for the state, to give everyone a voice. And if I get a Republican running out of Southern Charles County, so be it. The people have spoken. If we get one more white person, believe me, I'm the first black delegate ever from Charles County. So it'll be a quick change backwards, some may say. But what I will say is that's the people's vote. That's the people's choice. As a good colleague said from St. Mary's, the way we're doing things in Charles County right now is like me running as a delegate from Charles County, but having to please everyone in the state. Having everyone in the state have a voice in who represents Charles County. Not only is it untenable, but it's unfair. This really is not about anything but the people's right to choose and their voice and ensure that they all have a voice. I thank the good colleague. We've been serving together for a while. He's like my younger, fatter brother. And I really appreciate what he said on the floor today. But what I will say is I disagree. Give the people their choice. Vote green on this bill. Thank you.
Madam Speaker. Gentleman from Hartford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As a newer member of this body, coming in last year and my first session being what we all went through last year, I was listening a lot, watching a lot, asking a lot of questions. And one thing that, I learned very quickly is about rules and courtesies and how we engage each other, how we debate the issues and not people. And then we can, debate on the floor and walk away and, go break bread together and have those great relationships. And I've really appreciated that as part of my experience here. And the bill sponsor discussed about his time in the Army. Well, I want to talk about a little bit my time in the Marine Corps. In the Marine Corps, we train. We train every day on the exact same thing, doing the exact same thing the same way over and over and over again. And that training is based upon a set of rules that allow us to know that if something breaks down, the person to my left or right is going to do exactly what they're supposed to do, and we don't break ranks and we win the day. So last year, my first session, when a few bills came through that were local bills that I disagreed with, and all of my colleagues to my left and to my right all told me the exact same thing. This is a local bill, it's a courtesy bill, you vote for it. And I respected that rule. I don't know if it's a written rule, but it's a rule that I was told by everybody was the case. And because I respect every member of this body and I respect our traditions, I respected that rule. Sight unseen, no questions asked. And so my concern about this bill has nothing to do really with the merits of the bill, just with the rules that everyone in this body has laid forth to new delegates like me. And out of respect for everyone here, I follow those rules without question. And those rules are in place to keep that decorum, to keep that respect for each other, for our jurisdictions, and it eliminates a lot of contention sometimes on bills that are your local bills that I may disagree with, but I respect your right to handle your business locally. What I'm worried about with this bill, and again, I agree with the good delegate from Charles County, obviously, that everybody should have the right to have their voice, to have their vote. Every single person in America should have that opportunity. But what deeply concerns me is working around that local courtesy. Because if we do it here, where else is it going to happen? I don't want us or any member of this body to feel they have to start debating and becoming contentious over other
jurisdictions, local bills. And if we start here, where does it go and when does it stop? Again, I'm a rule follower. I respect the rules of this body, and I will continue to respect the rules of this body and every member in this House. Thank you.
Madam Speaker. Gentlelady from Charles County in the Annex.
Is this on? Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. First of all, I would like to thank the sponsor of the bill. Certainly, it is a difficult and challenging bill for some of the counties. Charles County is impacted, and for clear disclosure, I am a former county commissioner in Charles and understand why this bill is being proposed. More importantly, I will tell you why I feel that while I'm going to post a green vote, yes, I've observed in Southern Maryland the lack of equitable representation in a county that is really impacted, which is St. Mary's County. I've noted the frustration of the citizens, the fact that even though there were persons who offered diverse ideas and ideology, they were not elected. Hence, this sponsorship of House Bill 655 will give them that opportunity. It's unfortunate that some don't understand not having a voice and its impact and deterioration in terms of democracy in some counties. Hence, I again offer to rise my green vote for House Bill 655.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Calvert.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I've had an opportunity to obviously, and so all of us have, to listen to a lot of opinions about this bill. And I have to start out just from really the beginning, which is to say that we have the Calvert County Commissioners who wrote a letter to the committee, to the chair of the committee, saying that they would like for local privilege, of course, to be honored, which is a principled approach. And then the Calvert County Commissioners came back and said, okay, we'll compromise. How about a referendum? And they sent that letter as well. And the committee, of course, ignored that letter too. And so I keep looking at the bill, House Bill 655, and I keep saying to myself, what are they trying to accomplish? What are the Democrats trying to accomplish? And we heard some things on the floor by the floor leader, which were different from the tweets that we read in public. And so here is one such tweet. It says, I want to publicly support the sponsor for his work to reform voting in Maryland. We shouldn't have policies that can suppress minority opinions. HB 655 is an outstanding bill. Thank you for your leadership. We shouldn't have policies that can suppress minority opinions. And yet in Montgomery County, the election laws there have been put into place to suppress the opinions of minorities. And those minorities are the 100,000 Republicans who are not represented. 100,000 Republicans in Montgomery County have been disenfranchised. Because as I've mentioned previously, in Montgomery County, diversity is defined by how you look. But diversity of thought in Montgomery County is not allowed. And yet those individuals who aren't being represented are nonetheless minorities. In a county where groupthink runs the day, and there's no better example than, as I mentioned the other day, the county health officer trying to shut down private schools when public schools were open. My point in bringing this up is if there were a true alternative opinion in Montgomery County, if there really were diversity of thought, then you would have at least one voice, a voice in the wilderness, but at least one voice that would be able to say public schools should be open, just like private schools. And if that weren't enough, also in Montgomery County, educators held a car parade just recently because they don't want to go back to work. And what you don't hear from the Montgomery County delegation...
Madam Speaker, on the bill, delegate is not on the bill.
The floor leader.
Madam Speaker, just to let you know, on third reader, we have that's when we have the opportunity to have broad debate. And
Point
that's exactly
of
what I'm
order.
doing.
Debate on the
So-
bill, not on any topic. Debate on the bill.
Floor leader.
Yes,
We have
thank
to
you,
order.
Madam Speaker.
He
Sir.
has the floor.
Madam Speaker, I truly appreciate it. And so, in Montgomery County, we have teachers who are saying, by virtue of their car parade, that they don't want to go back to work. Now, if the minorities were represented in Montgomery County, then there would be yet a voice, and the voice would be speaking up saying, teachers should go back to work, and so should students full time. But that doesn't exist because you don't hear a single voice in Montgomery County from local elected officials pushing for that policy. And I'm going to give a final example about this problem when you don't have minorities represented. And that problem is a teacher in Montgomery County recently was caught on Zoom engaging in a sexual activity in front of his students. And in Montgomery
Please
County...
stay on the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And yet the teacher wasn't fired. Can you imagine? He actually admitted it, and he wasn't fired. So, on the bill, Madam Speaker, I do believe that minorities should be represented. As I said in my principled speech the other day about Calvert County. And if you want to know how principled I am about this, then we should look how the majority party in Maryland, the Democrat Party, has consistently gerrymandered districts at the congressional level. Here's an example, and this goes right to House Bill 655. When I moved to Southern Maryland, we had some of the most powerful people who were in charge, and those individuals were all white, and they made darn sure that they kept gerrymandering districts as Prince George's County's black population grew so that they could stay in power. In other words, it was the Democrat Party that actually was engaging in voter suppression in Prince George's County. And it's so easy to demonstrate. And so, all we're asking with House Bill 655 is to have local privilege, have proper representation, and if you can define a problem in Calvert County, please define it. But no such definition has occurred. And I'll leave you with this. If the Democrat Party was so virtuous, if they were so virtuous, then why is it took so many years after they've been in solid control of this body to get statues of Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass where they rightfully belong? Where they rightfully belong. Why is that? It's so funny when you ask these difficult questions.
Madam Speaker,
Because it goes to House
I'd like
Bill 655.
Speaker,
You do have to ask them to yield.
point of order.
I don't yield now.
Point of order.
Okay, sure.
He's not on the bill again. He's impugning motives to a party which has nothing to do with the bill. The bill is about the bill. I wish he would stay on the bill.
I will stay on the bill, Madam Speaker. I do believe I am because the central thesis of the bill by the sponsor, pursuant to his testimony, and by the entire Democrat Party is that the bill is necessary because minorities aren't being represented, which is why I mentioned the lack of representation in Montgomery County. from minorities. And so I will finish with this. There are those of us, many of us, who believe it's long time past to stop judging people by the way they look, and instead judge them by the content of their character. That's the generation I grew up in, and I'm
Majority
so proud to
Leader.
be part of it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate much of the debate so far. I appreciate the comments of both of the gentlemen from St. Mary's County, and the gentleman and the gentlelady from Charles County, and the gentleman from Allegheny County, and the gentleman from Harford County. I will say I find many of the remarks we just heard offensive, and as the gentleman from Allegheny County said earlier, unnecessarily divisive. So I'm not going to respond directly to them, because I do not believe that they're worth responding to. And I would encourage the members of my party to stay focused on the issue at hand and not rise to the bait. This bill has raised, in my mind, 3 issues that I think are worth discussing and which have been raised consistently by the minority party in their objections. And I appreciate their debate on all 3 of these issues. And I think it's important for us to have dialogue on all 3 of these issues. The first of those issues is the issue of local courtesy. And local courtesy is a tradition that I deeply value in this chamber. I think it's very important. But I think we misjudge local courtesy when we believe that local courtesy is absolute, that any jurisdiction can do whatever they want, whenever they want. We know that isn't true because we exist as a body. If local courtesy was absolute, we wouldn't need to have a House of Delegates, or really a state of Maryland. So the question with local courtesy is, where does it begin and where does it end? And surely on issues that are entirely local and have no impact on larger issues, I think you have a good argument. I think there's a bill that is on one of the calendars about Sunday hunting in Talbot County. This is entirely local. I believe democracy is something different. That the institutions of democracy and protecting the institutions of democracy raise a clear statewide interest. And so while I think there are valid disagreements about the extension of local courtesy on this bill, I happen to disagree. I think there is a statewide interest in this bill. The second issue that I want to address is race. And I said when I rose last week, we're going to have some difficult conversations about race. And it's about darn time. And I hope that members of both parties will join with me in accepting a fundamental principle that we're all going to have to accept if we will have these very difficult conversations in a productive way, which is the assumption that each of us is acting in good faith. I believe that each of us is acting in good faith. And when I raise issues of race, I'm not making accusations against any of you. But I do not think we can avoid that conversation. I do not think we can say that raising race itself is inherently divisive. I do not think we can dismiss concerns about racial disparities as the race card. And I do not think that we can try to use conversations about race in a partisan way. One of the things that people have missed in the conversation over the last couple of weeks is that there is nobody who is innocent of participating in racism in this country in some way. No institution. The issue of parties was brought up. In the 1870s, the North had won the Civil War. The Union had sent soldiers to the South to enforce Reconstruction. Black leaders were elected to the U.S. Congress. And what happened? White leaders in Washington, Republicans and Democrats both, struck a political deal that pulled federal troops out of the South, allowed the terrorism of the Ku Klux Klan to suppress black people all across the South, in return for allowing a Republican to become president of the United States. It's not a stain of one party or one institution. It's a stain on both parties. It's not a stain on one region. There were segregated beaches along the Chesapeake Bay, and Glen Echo Park in Montgomery County was segregated. It's not a stain on one state. The first Jim Crow law in the country was passed in Massachusetts. The first residential segregation law in the United States was passed in the city of Baltimore. It's a stain on our country. And we all, as patriots, as believers in America, have a responsibility to confront it. People have taken offense to people raising conversations about Jim Crow in this law. And I get it. I get it. It's difficult to differentiate between criticizing an institution like a system of elections and criticizing individuals. I get it. But the reality is, and this is the third topic I want to talk about, which is elections. The reality is that this type of election that we're talking about has been used to suppress minority opinions of all kinds. Minority parties, minority ideologies, and yes, in some parts of the country, racial minorities. It's just a fact. It's just a fact. And how do I know it's been used this way? Because my county's in this bill too now. So let's talk about Montgomery County. I think anybody who's went to one of our delegation meetings know we do not think with one mind. But we also have a very diverse political history. Our first county executive was an Eisenhower Republican. We elected Connie Morella, Howie Dennis, Gene Cryer, great legislators, great leaders, Republicans, all of them. Connie Morella was the first person I ever volunteered for. And then we went under a demographic shift in the late 90s and the early 2000s. Yes, we don't have any Republican office holders left in Montgomery County anymore because what Republicans do exist are dispersed widely across the county. It is literally impossible to draw a majority Republican district in my county. That does not mean Republican voices don't matter. It doesn't mean they shouldn't matter. So why do we elect our school board in this way? Well, I went back through the Washington Post. I looked at some old articles. And up until the mid-1980s, we elected all of our school board members at large, countywide. In the 1980s, that was proposed to change, and the concern at the time was that too many of the officials were being elected from down county. And one of the traditional fights in our county, it's not Democrat-Republican so much, it's up county, down county, and East County, West County. And so this system was proposed. So why is it, if you were trying to make it possible for more up-county people to get elected, why would you create a system of elections that still votes countywide? Why not just use districts? Well, the answer is obvious. Because at the time, before the demographic shift that led the county to become overwhelmingly Democratic, the Republican voters were up-county. So if you want to get up-county elected officials elected, but you don't want them to be Republicans, this is the system you implement. Exactly what we're trying to ban here. It's not about party. It's about power. And it's about the voice of the people. So I deeply respect my colleagues in the minority party who have debated this. I think we just respectfully disagree. And I'd ask the body to cast a green vote.
Gentleman from Baltimore County in the annex.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I really do appreciate, and I want to bring it back to the heart of the bill. The gentleman, I think the sponsor of the bill, makes one of the most important arguments that you can make about really any level of government. And that's the principle of lack of equitable representation. In District 6, these are the issues, I mean, they really tweak me. Just fundamental good government. Why can't we get the grass cut? Why can't we just get the mail delivered properly? In District 6, which exists in all of Congressional District 2, we have had a problem with the United States Postal Service for 5 years. And I'm talking terrible. It is bad. People's mail is delayed for a week or more. I can't tell you how many calls I've had from businesses who depend on the United States Postal Service, or elderly people who depend on the mail for their medications. I mean, it's 5 years now. 5 years. Legislative District 6, again, exists in all of Congressional District 2. And when you talk about lack of equitable representation, I mean, this is ground zero, because we have gotten absolutely no service on this issue. We can't get anybody to advocate for us. And I'm glad it's been recognized that we need to be able to stand up here and talk about some things that people don't want to talk about. And when you look at Maryland's 2nd Congressional District, we want to unify communities, one voice. You want to unify the communities of Aberdeen, Abingdon, Nottingham, Essex, Dundalk, Parkville, Timonium, Owings Mills, Brooklyn Park, Jessup, and Annapolis. When we talk about lack of equitable representation, why does it always benefit one side of the equation so much? Why can't people in places like Dundalk or Essex or Edgemere get equitable representation just so we can get the damn mail? How many years do we have to do this? I think I sense some of the frustration of the gentleman. But what about us? What about regular people who just want the damn mail? I'm glad that this discussion has finally permitted us to touch on the single member district issue. The bigger problem I think we need to recognize is that in politics, there becomes a good old boy network, which benefits the people on this floor. Look at Maryland's 2nd Congressional District. It is not contiguous, which is a straight up violation of the law. I can draw a more contiguous district if I squirted ketchup on my kitchen floor. It's a violation to draw a district over water. Congressional District 2 is connected by the Key Bridge. The government has gotten so busted that we can't even depend on the courts to uphold the law any longer. So, Madam Speaker, I really appreciate the sentiment of the bill sponsor. I appreciate you letting me speak today on the issue. We all need equitable representation. And as we talk through these electoral issues here, I hope that when we start to touch on issues like congressional districting, we stop drawing districts that are an absolute abomination. And when we start talking about things like single-member districts, which are the constitutional way to do it, we can remember these issues because it matters to people that are not here on this floor every day. Thanks so much.
Gentleman from Caroline.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do respectfully disagree with the majority leader on two of the points that he made. The first is having residency districts elected at large is not undemocratic. I mean, we've been doing this for hundreds of years. Everyone in the state of Maryland, whether their elected officials are elected at large or in residency districts, are still getting a voice. In fact, we can argue that they actually have a greater voice when they're elected at large. And the second point that I want to disagree with him on as well is that when they're elected at large, it's not racist. Racism in government is illegal, and it would have been challenged for decades now if there was any element of racism in this process. So I totally disagree with that as well. And there's a couple points that I actually want to wholeheartedly agree with from the delegate of Charles County. He said that we have to be in touch with our residents as elected officials. I wholeheartedly agree with that. And the second thing that he talked about was that this is more of a matter of control. I absolutely agree with that as well. Now, if we pass this bill, and we pass other bills, when we take that control away from our local elected officials, who, by the way, whether we want to admit it or not, are actually closer to the people on a lot of these issues than we are. Many of you all know I served 2 terms as a county commissioner, 8 years in Caroline County, one of the smallest counties in the state. And I can tell you, we talked about this. We had 3 county commissioners now that are elected at large. We talked about going to 5, and how are we going to do that? 3 or 5 members elected in district at large. And honestly, I could have gone either way on this. And I'm not going to stand here and argue whether one way is better than the other way. What I'm arguing, though, is that decision should be made by them. And I will also say that we talked about that issue for months. Not 2 days on the floor here, not a couple hours in committee. We talked about it for weeks. And we had people in the grocery store, in the coffee shop, in the library, on the streets that would stop me and the other 2 commissioners just to tell us how important that issue was to them. We were in much better control of that situation and how we're going to serve the people than we are right here in this chamber. I can tell you that for a fact. So I absolutely agree with him that it has everything to do with control, but the control should be at the local level, not here in the chambers. And I do trust, and when we do this, what we're doing is we're sending a message to our local elected officials, one, that they're out of touch with their residents. We don't trust the decisions that they're going to make because they're out of touch with their residents. I do trust our local elected officials from Garrett County all the way to Worcester County. I trust them. I trust that they're going to make the best decision for their residents. And we talked about the president of the Charles County Board of Commissioners, Commissioner Collins. And I'm actually going to read, these are his words, not mine. For all the successes in the area of diversity and inclusion, House Bill 655 stands to dilute the power of the community's black vote. This is undoubtedly not the intention of the bill sponsors. However, it's the potential consequence of the legislation. Our population center, Waldorf, is home to nearly half the county's residents, and the people of color comprise more than half of that population. Today, those individuals have a voice in determining the outcome of five commissioner positions. Should House Bill 655 pass, they will be reduced to voting for their district commissioner and commission president only. Charles County has come a long way since when the NAACP advocated for single district commissioners to diversify the board. And now we're well beyond that in terms of representation. While House Bill 655 may look like a short-term progress for counties lacking diverse representation on their boards, if Charles County were to erode the voices of the people of color after long and hard-fought advancements and is contrary to our status as code home rule. I trust Commissioner Collins. I have a lot of faith that Commissioner Collins is in touch with the residents of Charles County. I believe in what he's saying here. He doesn't support this bill. He very clearly said he didn't support these. These were his words, not mine. Madam Speaker, I encourage the body to vote red on this. Thank you.
Gentleman from Calvert.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As I rise today, some of it's with a little bit of sadness. The first thing I have to say is my colleague from from Charles County in the Annex, if I'm not mistaken, made a reference that made me feel like she was speaking of the people of St. Mary's County as being racist. Now, my tenure as a delegate for St. Mary's County has only been the last 5 years, 6 years. But I've got to know the people in St. Mary's County. And that statement is far, far from the truth. The folks that serve over in St. Mary's County on the local government are good people. We may have differences in how we want to do things, and we may fight over resources that are sometimes can be pretty minimal in Southern Maryland. But their motives are not racist. But I want to digress back to Calvert County, because that's my home, and that's where I cut my teeth on politics. I lived in Calvert County for 44 years, but spent most of my life there on the family farm in the summertime. When I first was elected in Calvert County, most all of our commissioners ran at large. I ran in a Republican primary, and on election night, I won by one vote in Calvert County. One vote. Went to the general election and won by like 17 or 18 votes the first time. So needless to say, it was a bit of a shock for me coming from being a retailer all my life to being a county commissioner. But one thing I learned at the time, there was 5 of us, and some of the older ones that were been on the board for a while, is we represented the whole county. I advocated very hard for my district, which was the first district down in Solomons, in that area. I advocated for everything I could get, but I understood and I supported what people needed in Dunkirk or other parts of the county or our two municipalities. Worked very hard to do that. And we were one county. There were efforts by people to try to divide us up into the northern county, the middle county, and the southern, but we didn't allow that to happen. And that's a trait in Calvert County that has stayed for many, many years. I went on and was elected to 3 terms, and in the 4th term I lost. I lost because the people told me that they didn't like my stance, or the environmentalists that lived in the county didn't like my stance on the Dominion Cove Point gas plant. I was fine with that, but my heart told me that was the right thing to do for the county. Now, a lot of these people that didn't vote for me are now reaping the gold from that plant, because the revenue that's coming in, and all the teachers and all the policemen and all the county employees and all the other businesses that made a lot of money are reaping the benefit of that. And they now come and tell me they were wrong, that I was right. But I didn't do that just for the 1st District of Calvert County. I did it for the whole county. And I worked with some of the greatest people that you could ever imagine in Calvert County. In Calvert County, we've had a history of minority county commissioners going back into the 80s. Believe it or not, our first minority county commissioner in the 80s was a Republican when Calvert County was Louis Goldstein, Democrat. Nobody voted Republican in Calvert County if you ever wanted to talk to Louis Goldstein. But we were able to elect an African-American gentleman who was a Republican. We had a tremendous Democratic commissioner in the 90s by the name of Mike Moore. And we had a tremendous, and was my pleasure to serve with, a commissioner in the 2000s, Commissioner Wilson Perrin. And Wilson Perrin had been on the school board in Calvert County and helped shape the policy of Calvert County in the school system that at the time, and still is, one of the best school systems in the state of Maryland. He worked very hard to see that it was, and there was many, many other African Americans that were on the school board. And at that time, it was an appointed school board. Then it changed to an elected school board. And it's different now, a little different now, but it's still a good school board. We have had a circuit court judge that we reelected to his seat, who had been our state's attorney for a period of time, and now is one of the highest courts in the state of Maryland. To change this process at this point in time, for me in Calvert County, is a little teeny bit of an insult in the fact that in 2013, this body and 34 current members of this body voted to make a change to Calvert County's election process that was put forth. At that time, the Board of County Commissioners, because I was on it, we didn't necessarily agree with it, but we were given an opportunity. We were given an opportunity to have public hearings and listen to input from our citizens and go back and work with that elected official to come to a compromise that he was happy with and that we would work for us. And that's all we're asking now, is to let us take back, just like everyone says, it should be for the people. And the people are not elected officials. The people are the people that pay the taxes, use our schools, use our public safety system. They're the ones that should be making this decision. Now, is there any county in this state of Maryland that there isn't some discrimination and some racism? Sure there is. Every county. There's not a person in here that can say that their county doesn't have a problem with that. And I understand that, but I'm a realist. I don't look to the far right or the far left. I look at reality. And what the reality is what's best for the people that are out there that I see every day being a retailer and talk to every day on a regular basis. And the reality of it is all the people want is to feel they have a voice and to be able to make these decisions and not leave it up to just 140 some people in this room and 40 some next door to make a decision on their elections. And that's what we should be doing. We should be allowed to take these to referendum. And if our counties want to be that way, elected that way, that's the way it should be. And Madam Speaker, I appreciate my time. I don't speak that often. But when I get something in my heart that I truly believe, and it shouldn't be that way, I'm going to speak up and let you know. Thank you.
Young lady from Hartford. We have 5 minutes.
Madam Speaker, thank you. Just rise today to offer a perspective. I've spent 25 years of my career in municipal, county, and state elected office. Those bodies have been elected in district and at large. The focus of the arguments today have been on Election Day and giving voices to underserved and minority communities, and I certainly support that and have worked most of my career to do that. But one issue that has not been discussed on this floor today is the day after Election Day and what happens on a county council or a county commissioners and the issues that are discussed and the votes that are taken that affect communities of color, the communities that are underserved, that deal with land use, budget priorities, school construction, roads, transportation, public utilities, zoning, and other things. That is when a few things matter: influence, voice, and math. The one vote that you have to put a district representative on a county council has one vote, and I have been that one vote for that minority community and that underserved. And so many times I've had to stand and look them in the eye and say, we stood alone because nobody else cared about us. Back in the day, Harford County, we all voted for all of our county commissioners, and everybody had to vote got the opportunity to vote for everybody in the county. And that was the day that the county council cared about the underserved. Today, I'm not sure they do, because we had a bill in another committee this week to try to create a municipality in one of my communities, because day after day, the county councilman who now sits in my seat and the seat there who I helped to get elected there only looks at his community because he cannot get the votes to get the schools and the transportation and the community services that we need in that community. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on this bill.
Floor leader for this bill. Subcommittee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. A lot has been said this almost afternoon about the issue of local courtesy. And what that brings me back to is imagining what would happen in our country, when we think about the history of our country, if we left voting rights and representation to local courtesy. Where would we be? Who would be able to vote? Who would be able to be elected in this chamber? This is a historic and important vote that we are about to take. The majority leader a few moments ago outlined that history and why this is a historic and important vote. But don't take my word for it. Don't take his word for it. The Department of Justice of the United States has weighed in on this issue in Maryland and has agreed that fair representation is lacking in a particular county in this jurisdiction that had this structure of allowing people outside the district to determine the representation of a district. The DOJ has weighed in. So don't take our words for it when we say that this is a problem. This bill is one that does not pick winners and losers. We are applying a basic principle universally, that voters in a district should decide their representation. It's a simple principle. So no matter what other arguments my colleagues who oppose this bill are bringing in, that is the core principle here. We didn't say, oh, we like the direction that Charles County is going in, so let's remove them from the bill. No. What we did was we stood here and we rejected every amendment to remove any jurisdiction from this bill, because the basic principle is that the districts, the voters in those districts should determine their representation. The voters in District 3 should not decide the representation of the voters of District 1. It's that simple. So I'm not going to belabor the point, because you guys have seen me stand here and argue this bill over a number of days now. But what I want to leave you with is that we are taking a stand, and that every time that this state sees an issue with voting rights, every time we see an issue dealing with fair representation, we will take a stand, because it is our duty, it is our right, and it is our obligation to do so. Vote green on this bill. Thank you.
Recognizing gentlelady from Baltimore City.
Madam Speaker, I move the previous question.
Question is the previous question. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. House Bill 655 is on third reading and final passage. Clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Explain my vote, Madam Speaker.
Yes. Your time be timed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to explain my vote against House Bill 655. The folks in Montgomery County clearly do not want to apply the same principles to their county that they're trying to apply to every other county in the state. And we see this because there is not minority representation. By minority, I'm referring to the minority of thought in Montgomery County, the 100,000 Republicans in Montgomery County who are disenfranchised. And yet, rather than using this bill as a vehicle to enfranchise them, Montgomery County is trying to tell the rest of us in the state that what we're doing is wrong. It's incredible, the groupthink that exists in that county, the lack of diversity of thought, the fact that the schools are still closed, the fact that there isn't educational freedom so that parents can choose to send their kids back to school if they really could afford it, which we could use those tuition tax dollars to do it, doesn't exist because of that groupthink. So I'm voting against House Bill 655 because the chief virtue signaling county of the state, Montgomery County, is trying to tell us to do something that it won't do itself. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker. Gentlelady from Howard in the Annex. To explain her vote.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To explain my vote, I have a great deal of respect for the majority leader. He made a wonderful speech, but there is an inbuilt hypocrisy that drives me absolutely wild. Everyone in this state wants to see us have good, impartial districting, except for the majority party in this House. You have gone on record saying that you do redistricting for the purpose of maximizing the number of people in your party. You took the Western Howard County, Western Maryland, and turned it into, from a Republican to a Democratic district that was so blatant that Supreme Court Justice Elena Kagan pointed it out as a perfect example of political redistricting. That kind of thing is not based on good government. So I am voting against this bill.
Gentleman from Western Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To explain my vote, I'm not going to take a lot of your time. I've already spoken at length why I'm opposed to this bill. This bill impacts 5 counties in Maryland. I hear the question about democracy and who's impacted and who isn't. This bill impacts my county, Garrett County. I've asked that we be excluded from this bill, and I was turned down. Time after time, I get up on this floor on issues where this body's making decisions that impact us in Western Maryland. I'm the only voice from Garrett County here. You shut down our natural gas development. You want to take away our coal tax credit. Our biggest employer out there, the Luke Mill, is now out of business because of things like black liquor and other environmental issues discharging into the Potomac River. And time after time, I've been beaten down, and any consideration that we feel that we should have out there has been turned aside. You know, I was a county commissioner, and I was elected under the system. There isn't any racial issue in Garrett County about this bill and excluding us from this. Only these 5 counties are impacted. The majority of you are not going to be touched by this bill. You've already decided how you want to be governed in your county, but you say it's fairness. You are deciding how we have to conduct our elections in Garrett County, and you're telling us how we have to do it. So we'll be back here for probably next year with a bill to try to fix this. But without going into great detail anymore, I've tried to appeal to your better conscience, and I'm asking you, please consider what you're doing to these small rural counties, and you're taking local control. You're taking the right of our people to decide how we
The gentleman's
elect
time is
county
up.
commissioner. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you for consideration. I urge that you put up a red vote on this bill.
Gentleman from Anne Arundel in the Annex. Explain his vote. 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I join the gentlelady from Howard County in her concern regarding this bill and her rationale for voting against this bill. In particular, unfortunately, Maryland has been nationally embarrassed by the gerrymandering of districts. I am concerned that this bill will enable there to be continued gerrymandered districts, much of the way we have our 3rd congressional district gerrymandered to the point that Ben and Jerry's ice cream, if you go to their website, calls it the most gerrymandered district in our nation and describes it as a quiz question. This would enable or runs a risk of further gerrymandered districts. We've refused to address this issue. Last year, a bill was before the Rules Committee, and the Rules Committee failed to even grant a committee vote. I hope that we will address gerrymandering within our state, our congressional districts, our state districts, and unfortunately, this bill does not provide any protection from gerrymandering within our counties. Our own state constitution provides that political subdivisions should be considered with regards to drawing of our state districts, but we're not doing this. We're now even trying to chop up our counties. Unfortunately, this is not in the best interest of Maryland, and I will be voting against this bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Clerk will take the call. There being 95 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 655, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Report of the Committee on Environment and Transportation, consent calendar number 30. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 528, St. Mary's County, repeal of impact fee, authorization of building excise tax. Favorable.
Recognizing the committee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the reading of the first bill be the reading of all the bills on the calendar.
So ordered. Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable reports are adopted. All the bills on the report are ordered printed for 3rd reading. Report of the Committee on Ways and Means, consent calendar number 33. The clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 10, income tax subtraction modification, living organ donors. Favorable.
Madam Speaker,
Recognizing the committee chair.
move that the reading of the first bill be the reading of all the bills on the calendar. Thank
So
you.
ordered. The question for the House is the adoption of the favorable reports. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable reports are adopted. All the bills on the report are ordered printed for third reading. That ends the work at the desk. All committee bill hearings are listed on the Maryland General Assembly website. All committees have bill hearings this afternoon. We will not be back. The committee got work to do. Quorum call before adjournment.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their presence? The clerk will take the call. There being 128 members present, the House is still in session. Recognizing the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the House stand adjourned until Thursday, March 4th at 10 a.m., Legislative Day, February 28th.